Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast uncovering the dark realities of cults and human trafficking. I'm your host, Anonymous Andrew, and each week we dive deep into the manipulation, control, and courageous escapes that define these worlds.
And I'm Melody, Andrew's co-host. Having experienced the depth of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I am here as an advocate for fellow survivors.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Cultimatum or its affiliates. The content discussed on this podcast are based on personal experiences and should not be construed as factual or legal advice. Neither the host nor the guest are liable for any statements made during the episodes. Listeners are encouraged to conduct their own research and seek professional advice where appropriate.
And before we dive into today's episode, we want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may cover explicit and potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive subjects. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, Cultimatum fans, before we dive into today's episode, we need a tiny favor from each of you.
That's right. If you love what you hear, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify.
Your support helps us to reach new listeners and bring more awareness and attention to these important topics.
So tap that star rating, drop a quick review, and help us spread the word. It really does make a difference.
Thank you so much for tuning in and for your amazing support. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get started with the show.
Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew. And with me tonight is my co-host, Melody. Hello, Melody.
Hello, Andrew. Today we're joined by someone who I found on TikTok. His videos first grabbed my attention with their mix of insight, fact, and a healthy dose of calling out deception where he sees it. Rob Tobler is a former member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as the Mormon Church, who now speaks out openly about the ways that the LDS leadership twists the truth, hides uncomfortable history, and misleads its members. Through his content, Rob pulls back the curtain to show where and how the church has been dishonest. Rob, welcome to the show. We're excited to hear your story.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. This should be fun.
Yeah, welcome, Rob. Great.
Thank you.
Where would you like to start?
Well, let me tell you a little bit my story. I'm like a fifth-generation Mormon. I grew up in Utah and then in Nebraska for high school. I served a Mormon mission in Argentina and returned to Brigham Young University where I graduated and joined the Air Force. I was always faithful, always believing, not ever able to get the witness that it was true that everybody talked about, but I was in love with it and passionate about it. Got married, had kids. This is the Mormon formula. And found myself in Washington State where I got involved in apologetics, online defense of the religion. And a couple other things happened at that time which were significant in my story. Number one, the Joseph Smith Papers Project came out, where for the first time ever, members such as myself had access to Joseph Smith's journal and original copies of his revelations. The other thing that happened that time was my children started getting into real trouble. And then the third thing was that my wife was chosen to be an extra, a background actor in some Bible videos that the church was making in the deserts of Utah. So when my wife came back from her trip, I said, "How was it?" And she said, "Well, it was a special experience, but in between filming, I was talking to the actor who portrayed Jesus, and I noticed that I had a hard time keeping eye contact, and I felt kind of inadequate, and I never, ever want to feel that way in the presence of the real Jesus." So she started really studying the life of Jesus of Nazareth. Meanwhile, I'm saying goodnight to her, and then I'm pulling up the laptop and I am scouring through the Joseph Smith Papers Project, and I am finding major problems that are destroying my faith. Little things like the fact that my founder married 14-year-old girls behind his wife's back I never heard this information growing up. Things that were very deeply problematic, as you can imagine. So 16 years of deconstructing in a faith crisis, but not telling a soul. Who could I talk to? I didn't want to lose my marriage. I didn't want to be shunned by the community. And then COVID hit, and that gave us an opportunity to really take a breath away from church. And when we were finally allowed to go back to church, my wife approached me, trembling, tearful, and she said, "I'm not going back to church." And I said, "Why? You're the most quintessential Mormon woman I've ever met, you know." And she says, "Because the Jesus they teach there is not in harmony with Jesus of Nazareth." I said, "Well, honey, look, everybody's got their issues with the church. I'm sure there's a way you can resolve." She says, "Oh, do you have issues with the church?" I said, "Yes, but I don't want to tell you what they are." And
you already know about the 14-year-old wife.
Yeah, all the stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
more stuff than I ever wanted to know. She says, "Give me something." I said, I really don't want to tell you." She says, "Come on, give me one thing." I said, "Well, the Book of Abraham. It's something that Joseph Smith claimed to have translated from Egyptian, and we found the original copy. It's a complete fail. It has nothing to do with Abraham. It's a funeral text. It's from a mummy, you know." And she says, "That's not true." I said, "Yeah, it's true." She says, "Give me something else." I said, "Well, polyandry." She says, "You mean polygamy?" Because she knew about polygamy. I said, "No, polyandry. That's where a woman has multiple husbands." And Joseph Smith participated in that as well, marrying the wives of his church buddies without his wife's consent or knowledge. When she heard those things, it took her about a week of looking into it, and she was done. She resigned, bought a coffee pot, complete taboo in Mormonism, right? You can't drink coffee. And all of my children followed her out of the church. And I was alone thinking, what do I do?
What just happened?
So I threw myself into therapy, and the therapist said, "What do you want to talk about today, Rob? You want to talk about, your marriage or some of your kids and their struggles?" I said, "No, I have got to talk about this faith crisis. It's killing me." She says, "I think you need to find your own voice. You've let these old men determine your ethics, your morality all these years. Find your voice." Now, I think what she intended was like to do some journaling. But I thought, I heard about this app called TikTok. Maybe I could make an anonymous account and just kind of get this stuff off my chest, Am I crazy? Am I the only one seeing this stuff and seeing what a problem all this Mormon history is? And, well, I found like-minded people who understood, and that's, it kind of took off from there.
And just as a side note, that social media and the internet's going to be the downfall of many of these cults.
Yeah.
They don't see it coming, but it's coming.
So
It's already here, but it's just slowly.
was
coming.
was the start a different account where you weren't showing your face originally?
Well, I was showing my face, but I wasn't telling anybody who I was, and the account was named "President, Please Help Me." Like, I was desperate. Hey, church leadership, if I've been a faithful member for 45 years. I've done all the things. I'm desperate. This is my Hail Mary pass. Is there anyone out there that can help me? And when I realized it was a fruitless effort, they don't go after the lost sheep. They shun the lost sheep. And so that's when I switched it to my real name. And I've met some amazing people through that platform.
It has done a lot for a lot of ex-cult members because they feel like they can go on there. They feel that a little bit of a wall, so they're comfortable enough to say what they want to say. And then they are actually met with, like you said, finding people, like-minded people that they can actually feel like they've found their tribe, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, on my hundreds of TikTok videos, I have been very careful not to use the word cult because I know how hurtful it is to members of the Mormon Church and my parents, my siblings, they're all members. But the more I learned, the more culty stuff I came across, and the church really checks all the boxes in Stephen Hassan's BITE model.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely. And some of the, besides controlling members' behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions, it's also an organization where you really can't leave with your dignity intact. And fear is the driving motivation in most of the actions and activities. So that would be some other criteria that I would add that they also meet.
So you're out, your wife's out, the kids are out, but you have other families still in.
Absolutely. And so I work as an air traffic controller. And one day I was at work just stewing about all this stuff, and it actually distracted me from doing my job. And two aircraft got closer together than they should have. And I was like, I cannot keep this in any longer. I got a break. I went down. I called my parents. I said, hey, your daughter-in-law is no longer a member of the church, which shocked them. And I said, and in all integrity, I cannot support this organization anymore. And that did not go over well. My dad said that it would drive a wedge, and months went by before he was willing to talk to me again. And I've really never been able to have a conversation about why we left with my siblings, my parents, my grandparents. It's heartbreaking.
So the conversation you had with your wife, you couldn't have with them by revealing what you found out.
Absolutely. And I don't think it had they been open to the conversation, I don't think it would have went well, because there's the backfire effect where they essentially double down,
Right.
and they'll use a bunch of thought-stopping cliches, like, well, it's not meant for us to know, or God's ways are higher than, and that stops the thinking, stops the critical thinking.
Gaslighting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that too. Yeah.
Well, amongst all of the cults and everything is the word, the indoctrination, the whole concept from love bombing when you first join, and then they get you in and they get their claws into you, and then when you try to whatever, all that's all gaslighting in there. I mean, I know it's a niche or nouveau word today or phrase, but it's been around a long time, and it's just somehow made its way into our vocabulary, but is essentially what it is. It's them double talking and dancing around the actual issue without answering it. And when you confront somebody, so gaslighting can be used in relationships, in cults, or they can use it in the court of law. So it's just it's an amazing tool.
So I was in preparation for this interview, I was thinking about, all LDS churches have a big sign out front that says "Visitors Welcome," and if you take that invitation and you go in and listen to a Sunday service, it really doesn't feel that culty. And so I wanted to share with you both the cultier aspects of what it's like to actually be a Mormon missionary and enter a Mormon temple. But before I talk about those two things, I want to propose, why is Mormonism like this, and how did it get this way? And I think there's three things. Number one, Joseph Smith's narcissistic, controlling personality. Number two, polygamy. Mormon marriages used to be public. People were invited. But once polygamy started, that had to happen behind closed doors, because it had to be secret, because it was illegal,
Legal.
And the third thing, and this is something I've looked a lot into, is Joseph Smith was a treasure digger before he started his career as a prophet. And, to seek treasure underground, and he was he wasn't really the digger. He was the one who stared at the magical steer stone and told people where to dig and how guardian spirits had moved the treasure. But the culture there is of exactness. You have to make a magic circle, and you have to sprinkle the blood of a sacrificed animal, and you have to be quiet, and if anything goes wrong, he could blame the failed finding of the treasure on that. And so when he came up with, hey, I've got these golden plates, I'm going to produce this book, everything was like life or death. I can't show you the plates or God will strike you dead. And so his personality, treasure digging culture, and polygamy has contributed. These ingredients have created the cult that the LDS Church is today. And I can't believe I just said that
in a sentence.
So go. You caught my attention when you said that there's a visitor sign at the outside, and people can come in and see an actual ceremony or mass or whatever's going on. Do you think those? I know the answer to this. It's sanitized, right? It's done so it attracts more people to come in, but the curtains are drawn.
For sure. And in fact, when the Latter-day Saints build a new temple, they'll have an open house, invite the public, public figures like the mayor, is welcome to come and have a look-see. But you won't really understand what happens in there. And then they will have a dedication. They'll basically lock the doors, and nobody gets in unless they have a temple recommend. So that means that only about 15 to 20% of Mormons are even allowed to go into the temple and participate in the stuff. So let me tell you what that's like.
Okay.
Imagine you're a 19-year-old boy from Nebraska. Your whole life you have been taught that your goal is to get to the temple and be a missionary and then go back there and get married one day. You've sung songs. For example, we have a song in the Mormon Church called "Follow the Prophet," and we chant that phrase 36 times during the song. That's a little culty. But you show up to the temple excited to serve this mission, but you have no idea what happens in the temple. You really don't. And there's no opportunity to get informed consent for what's going to happen. And when you enter that temple, you're asked to strip nude. You're told to wear a poncho, which is completely open on the sides. And then you're escorted into a room where you're given a new name to replace your name. And a stranger, usually an elderly gentleman, will reach in and touch underneath the poncho parts of your body, blessing your heart and your bowels and your throat and your head and all the things. But it is shocking. And then you will have to make covenants to forfeit and commit your everything, your time, your talents, your money, your life if necessary. But not to Jesus, not to God, but to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the corporation of the president of the church. That's what you are committing to offer your everything to. And then you're given the sacred garment that you are then to wear underneath your clothing, street clothing, for the rest of your life. If you're a female, you will get to cover your face with a veil because somehow God doesn't like women seeing their faces when he prays to them or when they pray to him. And then you will have to make a solemn covenant to obey the law of your husband or your future husband if you don't have one yet. And then you will learn secret signs, tokens, handshakes, passwords, which supposedly you'll need to show in order to get through the gates of heaven after death and judgment day. But what you will not know is that these gestures have been borrowed from Masonry, and they actually, the shapes that you make with your hands and things are symbolizing weapons and pantomiming you unaliving yourself if you were to ever give away these secrets. But today, members go to the temple, they have no idea where this stuff came from or what it actually means that they're doing.
Because they don't know to even ask.
Exactly. And they're not encouraged to ask, right?
Right, exactly.
The information control within the LDS system is powerful. We are told, don't take counsel from those who don't believe. Only read church-approved, divinely inspired sources. So that, not Google, not Wikipedia. Don't go there. Yeah.
Is this, and I might just be confused, but because we've done so many cults and I sometimes it's hard to keep track. Is this the cult or the organization that the women wear special kind of underwear?
Both men and women wear an undergarment, which used to be like long johns, but it's gotten shorter. It's like briefs, like spandex briefs, and then like a white T-shirt, essentially. But it has sacred markings, which are reminders of promises you've made and stuff like that. But men and women wear them. They're supposed to wear them all the time, except for, when you're taking a shower or,
And they're called what?
It is called the garment of the holy priesthood, or garments. Yeah.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up.
So after the temple experience, you go to the missionary training center. I was called to serve in Argentina. Was not my choice. I was told that I was going to pay for this 2-year experience at the cost of about $500 a month. And when I got there, you first go through a series of interviews and inspections. They want to make sure your hair is to standards, that your tie is. I got in trouble. One of my ties was a little bit too flamboyant. Apparently, I had to send it home. And then you go through. It's not auditing, but some interrogations where they want to make dang sure that you are really worthy to be there, that you haven't committed any mortal sins like, drinking coffee or masturbating or something that would just, unhuman behavior. How dare you? But anyway, so from the language and missionary training center, you go out into your assigned mission field. For me, it's Argentina. You will be assigned to a companion, not of your choosing, and that's when it really can get tough, because you are told when to wake up, what to wear, what to do, and you are cut off from normal communication with friends and family. You're not. When I was a missionary, you could only call home at Christmas and Mother's Day. And one year we didn't have enough baptisms, so my mission president didn't let us call home on Mother's Day. That sucked. But I remember I once had a companion. He was a rich kid, and so he wrote a letter on the non-approved day for writing letters, and he faxed it to his dad, and his dad faxed a message right back the very next day. He didn't have to wait 2 weeks like me, who wrote the letter by hand on the appropriate day, sent it to my parents. They got it a week later, and then a week later they sent their letter. So 2 weeks later, I finally got a response. Also, as a missionary, you're cut off from news, access to the internet,
Current events, life.
Current events. Like, there could be a civil war happening in the country that you're living. You might not know about it, right? And I guess I just want to emphasize just the mind control. Like, I remember when I was there were some missionaries who in Chile had died. They had a fire when had a problem with their gas heater, and they died. But one of the things that came out is that their bicycles had been in their bedroom. And so when they tried to get out of the apartment, the bikes fell against the door, and so the smoke and the fire, it was a sad situation. But of course, that comes taught to me as like, you see, the devil's out there. He's trying to destroy you, and you better follow every single rule you've been given by your mission president. Otherwise, your life's in danger. And I remember one particular day. Thanks for letting me just ramble, folks, by the way.
Go. We love it.
This is what you hear.
Mormon missionaries were assigned areas. So, from this street to this town, or whatever this, and then other missionaries will have other areas. Well, you're not supposed to leave your mission area without permission. And I remember one day, my mission companion, he's like, hey, let's get some groceries. And he pointed to a grocery store across the street. And I was so terrified. I said, hey, we can't go over there. That's not our area. The other side of the street belongs to a different set of missionaries. Like, if we go over there, we're unsafe. And he just walked right across the street. And I was caught with this like dilemma of like, well, I know I'm supposed to stay with my companion, but I know I'm supposed to stay in my area. What do I do? And just like the fear guiding my every danger, 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 obey, obey, obey. Yeah. My nervous system was very nervous as a missionary, which is the time I was the most Mormon ever.
And you had to pay this excursion in Argentina? Where did the money come from?
Well, partly from me, partly from my parents. It used to be that you had to kind of pay your own way. And then what they found is that, missionaries who went to some expensive country versus those who went to a very poor, cheap country, it wasn't fair, so they standardized it. And I think today it's about $550 a month. And they have made some improvements. They do let missionaries send emails now. And some missionaries are allowed cell phones, although the phones are kind of controlled by the church and limited as to what apps and stuff they can have and things. But
I'm wondering how if you knew kind of that you were, are you familiar with the term PMO? It's
yes, ma'am. Physically and mentally out.
Yes. So it's a Jehovah's Witness token term, but I love it. So were you essentially PMO for 16 years? Like, did you say that am I misunderstanding that you woke up and you stayed in the church for 16 years because you didn't want to lose your family, your wife, your kids, all of that. Were you in that state of PMO for 16 years?
I would say it was a gradual transition to where maybe the last 4 or 5 years I was physically there. I was actually the Bible study teacher for the teenagers here in my local community for the LDS church, but mentally I was out. Like I didn't believe anything the church was producing. I couldn't trust them. I knew from the historical documents they couldn't be trusted. So it was a gradual process.
Okay, so for not the whole 16 years, that was just kind of when your deconstruction, so to speak, started,
Well,
was a 16-year process.
that started when your wife came back from that desert shoot for the Bible thing, right? And you
Yeah.
looked into the story.
And
Or the
the church has improved some, but 8 years ago, if a woman, for example, went to her Mormon bishop, local congregation leader, and said, "Hey, my spouse doesn't believe this stuff anymore, or they don't want to pay tithing because they don't believe this anymore," she would have been counseled to leave her husband and find a worthy Mormon husband who could take her to heaven. And so that's why my wife was so terrified when she came to me. And I was even more chicken because I spent, over a decade just, I didn't want to talk to her about this.
Are you still together?
Yes, thankfully. And I feel so privileged because not everybody is as lucky, and they're stuck in what we call a mixed faith marriage, where one believes and one doesn't. And then they have to negotiate conflicts about, well, should we let the children get baptized or not? I just feel for those people. It must be horrible.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys were able to somewhat deconstruct together. I'm sure almost bouncing ideas off of each other or presenting each other. Well, what do you think about this? And I mean, because if you knew that she was open to hearing it, it makes it a lot easier for you to present your case, so to speak.
Yeah, and it was actually really fun because when I began to go public and make these TikTok videos, sometimes I needed a helper to hold the camera, or I needed a female voice because I was going to make some little interaction, and she was shy to be on camera with me at first, but she helped me, and she learned a lot through my TikTok videos. I would make a TikTok video about Joseph Smith prophesying that there were men on the moon and that one day Mormon missionaries would get there and preach the gospel to them. And she says, "That's not true." I said, "Oh yeah, here, let's make a video about this." And so we learned together, and
That's fun.
yeah, it was
It's a
fun.
lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess how do I say this? In Mormonism, it's very patriarchal, and there's a passive aggressiveness. And so in my TikTok videos, I used what I'd learned, and I used a lot of comedy, but I would kind of present information and use comedy, but I really wanted to pack a punch. I wanted people to know. I want people to know. They have a right to know. And if they still
Yeah.
choose to go with it, that's fine, but they deserve informed consent.
Absolutely.
right.
And all your kids
It'd have
are
to-
supportive of your TikTok and what you're doing and all of that. Do they? I mean, they probably think it's kind of cool. I would think.
Well, they think it's cool that I can have an influence. When I dress up as Dora the Explorer and do a little song and dance, they're a little embarrassed, as you can imagine. But I have really learned to appreciate my children. They have taught me a lot. At one point, my son, who he'd made some really interesting life decisions, he said, "Dad, your religion's a pile of shit." And I responded with grace, but I was like, "Oh, I'll prove you wrong. I'm going to double down." And he was right. He was
He was
right.
right.
So, yeah.
That's funny. The irony. The irony. Now you can tell them you were
Yeah.
right when you said that.
I know.
So, how many years has it been since you officially left?
Okay, so I should have corrected you at the very beginning of the podcast. I officially haven't left. I am a member of record, but I don't
Oh.
attend. I don't contribute. And I think part of it is, I feel like I don't have to beg their permission to no longer consider myself a member of their church. And if they want me off their books, then they need to bring me in and try to haul me in for what they call a disciplinary council and excommunicate me. and I would accept that invitation, and I would probably go down as a martyr and let them cut me off. But plus, what we know about the Mormon Church is they're very secretive, and when you ask to have your records removed, and you have to get a lawyer to help you with this, by the way, they don't actually remove your name. They just put a little star by it, says no longer a member. Now I can understand that if somebody say who was a child predator, got excommunicated and wanted to come back, they'd want to remember that, right? Protect children. But they don't erase people's names. They keep track. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
And as the computer age digitalizes, those names will go down into the computers. I would imagine at one point it was all handwritten, but I can imagine it's all in databases now. I don't, just assuming.
The LDS Church, they have more money than God. I don't know if you know. Do you know about this?
Yes. Yes, but you can tell us more again, because we have heard this before.
So as members, you're asked to tithe a full 10% of your gross income, and you believe that it's going to missionary work and humanitarian aid, feeding the poor, the hungry. And then when you find out that they created 13 shell companies to hide their $250 billion worth of stock portfolio, and then they got caught by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they had to pay like a $5 million fine for this. That really hurts your feelings.
Yeah, that's eye-opening.
And it's not going towards missionaries because you had to pay your own way. If it was going towards missionaries, your going to Argentina would have been paid for, right?
Yeah.
I'm just following the bouncing ball, because you said you had to pay your own way. But if they have $250 billion, they could have at least paid for your missionary journey to.
I have nieces out right now paying their way as Mormon missionaries. And this very month, I found out that the LDS Church is paying influencers to create pro-Mormon content on, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Well, they have to answer you and the rest of the people who have left. They have to counter that.
And
right?
I was going to say, and Rob, I can totally relate to your idea of the excommunication or the being taken off the books thing, because my cult had the same thing. And it's kind of almost even just the idea of how they handle that is almost a God complex in itself. Like they have the authority to take and give away somebody's salvation. That in itself, I don't even like the idea of acknowledging it, like being excommunicated or shunned or taken off the books. It's a weird thing for a group to do or believe they have the authority to do.
Yes, I think it's barbaric. I think it's really antiquated. To imagine that day comes where I get that letter saying, "Hey, Rob, come on in. We've got to have a hearing to see if you need to be disciplined." I have been a member for 45 years. I gave 2 of those years as a missionary. I have donated, I hate to even do the math, but probably over $150,000 in tithing donations to them. They will make a decision in about 15 minutes whether or not to strip me of my baptism, priesthood, all the things, which would essentially consign me to hell. They'll make that decision in 15 minutes. Yeah.
Right. With no refund for any of your tithing.
No. No.
So, I going back to my question, I used the wrong phrasing. So you left. So you're POMO, physically out, mentally out, but you're still on the books. How long ago was that when you said to your wife, "I'm out, and this is why you should be out," and then the kids followed you? How many years ago was that?
Well, 5 years ago, my wife and children were totally out. I also have a daughter who's gay, and so she actually left a little before my wife did, because the church's LGBTQ policies are deeply hurtful. And but really, for the last 3 or 4 years, I'll confess, it's my wife saying, "Just let this stuff go, leave it alone, let's move on to a new life." And I'm like, people have got to know.
No. And this is your quest. This is your way of deconstructing too, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And what I've learned is that I've deconstructed the Book of Mormon. I've deconstructed Joseph Smith, but there is so much more to deconstruct. I had a transactional relationship with God. I had some pretty messed up gender ideas. Um, Racism, absolutely, racism is part of the LDS scriptures, and I had incorporated that. And also, Mormonism really stunts a person's emotional development. Rather than realizing that our thoughts create our feelings, they tell you that your feelings are coming from over there, from the devil, or over there, from a Holy Ghost. And here's what the feeling means. And if you have any kind of a negative emotion, well, that's from the devil. In fact, we sing a little song in church that says, if you chance to meet a frown, do not let it stay. Quickly turn it upside down and smile that frown away. It's like, just pack it
Like
down.
sounds like
Ignore your.
grammar school stuff, kindergarten stuff.
Well, that is a children's song, but so I'm still working through a lot of stuff. I don't know that I'm out of the woods yet, but
Oh, because if you're in there, how many years? 40 something years
From birth.
You're not gonna.
yeah,
You're not gonna get out in. I hate to do this, but like I'm in recovery from alcoholism, and I drank 50 years of my life, but I'm out 10 years. It's gonna take me a long time to equalize that, And so while I may be living a life of sobriety now, there's still many years I need to atone for, and so that's my thing, my baggage to carry. You're what you're trying to do is just make aware, but you need to undo what has been indoctrinated into you for 40
yeah.
something years. 5 years isn't going to do it. You're going to need probably another five, and then maybe another five.
But
Well, and
I'm
everybody
working hard.
does it different.
Yeah, yeah. So my wife, she was a convert from Catholicism, and it was a lot easier for her to let go and walk away. And I said to her, I'm like, honey, I was learning about Angel Moroni and all the things as I was learning how to tie my shoes and what my name was. And
Right?
so, I go to therapy. I've discovered the healing benefits of plant medicine. And just this week, I finally got the wherewithal to have a somatic release experience. And I had a little bonfire and I burned my Mormon scriptures. So
Wow.
I'm working
Wow,
on it.
that's symbolic. So what was that like for you?
It was a beautiful mix of emotions of anger and sadness. As I took my scriptures that are very expensive actually, and I said, I actually recorded it. I'll probably create a TikTok video about it. But I said, my parents gave this to me when I was 13 years old, and I have cherished it, and it has served me. It served me for many years, but it doesn't serve me anymore. I've graduated, and I will let it go. And I threw it into the fire and watched it burn. And the following day, I dumped it in this little swampy pool area where there just happened to be a rotting carcass of some animal
Gosh.
alongside my ashes of Mormon scriptures. And there were little minnows and frogs like feeding on this thing. And I thought, this is the cycle of death and rebirth. And I need to let this aspect of my prior life, let it die and be born into something healthier and better, So I'm
I
doing the
love
work.
that.
I'm trying.
That's very symbolic. I love that. That's a good story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I thought you were going to say this animal rose from the ashes or something, but
Melody, you're lucky that you reached out to me when you did, because I've had a bitter and sweet relationship with TikTok. I've met great people. It's been very healing. And then I've bumped into Mormon apologists who are, well, it's just not been pleasant. And so I've, debated, should I just walk away from this app or should I still stay involved and help people? And this week, I flew to I live in Hawaii. I flew to the mainland and I was standing in the airport and I turned around. I couldn't believe it. Standing right behind me was one of the 12 apostles of the Mormon Church. You never see these guys. You can
I
never
saw
get
that
close to
TikTok.
them.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, here's my chance. I've wanted to ask my tough questions and speak my truth. And I looked at this poor man, and he looked exhausted, and his poor wife looked just. And anyway, at that moment, my anger was overcome with compassion. I thought, just let it go, Rob. He's not going to offer an apology or any explanation.
No, like you said, he'll probably double down,
Yeah.
or he might even deny who he is. He might not. You got the wrong guy.
Well, he certainly wasn't going to give
Yeah.
you closure. Your book
No.
burning ceremony was going to give you a lot more closure than confronting him.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I want to say something. I feel like I've been kind of harsh against this former religion or cult of mine. I do want to say that, like, Mormonism, from the local congregation down, it feels really pretty good. But from the headquarters, like upper level, that's where it is hurtful, deceptive, and very problematic. I like to tell the joke, most people are buried 6 feet deep, but Mormons are buried 10 feet deep. You know why that is? It's because deep down they're good people. Anyway.
That was good. And I've never heard a cult joke, so I got to remember that one. That's a good one. That's our first cult joke.
All right. Sweet.
God, I just had something to ask you before that. All right, so we do have to start to wrap up. So you're in Hawaii, which I guess you moved there how long ago?
Like 8 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. And you're still air traffic control? Okay. Where are you in your faith today?
Wow. This is the question I was afraid you'd ask, but I'll just be honest. I felt unmoored. I felt broken when my faith crisis really came to a head, and I was desperate to make Christianity work. And so I grabbed the New Testament and I just started studying the heck out of that, as well as scholarly research. And the problem was the Joseph Smith Papers Project, because of all the documents and because Mormonism is such a new religion, you can see how scripture is made. You can see how doctrine develops. And when I really looked hard at the Bible, I saw the same things. I could see the narrative shifting over time, the doctrine being developed, and I could see that the book was not infallible and reliable like so many want it to be. And I still think Jesus is an amazing person. I want to emulate his life in so many ways, but I have not found a home in Christianity. And I'm actually just enjoying being a student and exploring what does Buddhism have to offer? What does secular humanism have to offer? What does science have to offer? And it's been joyful, really joyful.
Good. So you're exploring all opportunities or all.
Yeah, and I'm shunning away from labels like agnostic or atheist. I'm probably agnostic, but I actually, I'm gonna confess something. I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna become a plant medicine facilitator. I have found so much healing in that space, and of course, I can't do it here in the United States because they don't have laws for that. But in Spain, they do, and so that's my plan: move to retire.
What is it called?
Well, plant medicine, like psilocybin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then my wife and I, we've committed that we're just going to live what we call pure religion undefiled, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, just serving orphanages, schools for the rest of our life until our bodies wear out. That's where we think we can find joy and make a difference.
Good for you.
Just being
Thank
good
you.
people.
Thank you.
I love that.
Without
simple.
doing it for some eternal reward of multiple wives in heaven or some
fear of hell or exactly. Just to be a good person.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And my question, Rob, that I typically ask at the end of our episodes, if let's just say there's some questioning Mormon or somebody else from some other group that might be listening to our show today, and they've heard your story and they may be having some doubts themselves about their own group or their own organization, what would be your advice to them?
I would say go slow and learn from every perspective possible. Learn about Mormonism through archaeology, science, psychology, but if you're only looking at the information that the church offers you, you're getting biased information. And one of the most powerful things I ever did with my wife, we listened to a podcast called Learning How to See, and they explore human biases, mental cognition, and understanding how our brains work. That was a game changer for me, to realize, to become aware of how much bias I actually was operating under.
Right.
So
Wow.
I feel like self knowledge is the best knowledge, and then getting as many perspectives as possible. Because the consensus from the archaeological, the DNA, the psychological community is that Mormonism is not what it claims to be, and in many ways not very healthy.
So if you walk in on visitor day, just be forewarned. Do your homework.
You're going to be love bombed when you walk into a Mormon church,
Oh, yeah.
but the moment you raise your hand and say, "But wait a minute, what?" Then
Yeah, they don't
it's a
like
different
they
experience.
don't like to be questioned, or they don't like that pushback, because and I think that's the easy question for all these groups and organizations and cults is to say, don't do that. That's the devil sneaking in. That that critical thinking is always from the devil or the evil one or Satan, and
Mhm.
that way even when you start to question something or start that critical thinking, you second guess yourself and you get scared and you're like, oh no, I can't think that thought, and you push it out.
I had contracted out all of my thinking, all of my judgment when I was a Mormon, and learning to trust myself and listen to other voices and perspectives it's been a challenge, but it's been really, really a good thing for me. So thank you for your time, guys. I enjoyed
No,
this.
thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Yes, this has been an awesome interview. We thank you so much for doing some last minute scheduling with us and coming on the show. We're very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time.
Well, I sure applaud what you do. I hope you'll keep at it.
We will.
Life's too short to spend your years stuck in a high controlled demand religion or a cult.
Yep. Agree
Yep. Well,
100%.
we're seeing a trend in what's happening with you, with families, with the modern digital age. People are starting to see the light. I don't know if you heard Twin Flames Universe out of Michigan got brought down. The cult, Twin Flames cult. So it's coming. These cults are going to slowly start to crumble. Some of the bigger ones, like Scientology and Mormons and all that, it's going to take a little longer. But a lot of these cults, they're starting to crumble. So, and due to the work done by ex-cult members like you on social media and other platforms. So, great work, Rob. Great work. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aloha.
Oh, aloha. Okay, great.
Aloha. And once again, we want to thank Rob so much for coming on the show and sharing his story with us. Wow, Andrew. What I mean, such a positive, energetic guy, very articulate.
Not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He first there I don't know what it is about him, but for some reason he doesn't really seem like an ex-Mormon to me. I mean, that may seem a little bit like bias or something, but he just such a nice guy, very easy to talk to. Really good interview. Really good interview.
You can tell he's just a genuine, delightful human being. The fact that he wants to go feed the hungry and clothe the naked and then do plant medicine, which I can get into a whole topic about that. The plants that are on this planet were put here to help us, and like things like pot, and I can name a couple of others that are already being used for health. But something like psilocybin, he wants to use psilocybin to help. There has been studies that it helps the veterans coming back from war, PTSD. There's so much work to be done, and of course we got whatever. I'm gonna go off on a political soapbox, but he wants to do that, and
Yes,
I think that's great. And
I
so
do
to
too.
go from being a Mormon to going to want to do that, I think is fantastic.
For sure, for sure. And just such an interesting story, Mormon from birth, which, I
Yeah.
actually think for being a Mormon from birth, anybody who is born into these cults, which I can't relate to because I was not born into mine. I went into it as a young teenager, but I'm so impressed with how fast people, or at least it seems to me how fast some people can deconstruct.
Well, that's why I kind of mentioned to him, I said, you've been in 40 something years and now you're only really out 5. And
Right.
I just, not that I'm an expert on this, but been doing this over a year and change now. We have seen many guests that struggle through deconstruction. Now, he seems like a strong character of a
Yes.
man, but I think he's got a little bit more time to go in deconstruction. Like I said to him, I said to him, you got maybe 5 or 10 more years
Yeah.
before you're really done. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe this new journey of his with his wife that they want to go on may completely leave the Mormons behind, and he'll go off and help the world. And so I
Yeah.
hope I'm wrong. I hope that he's done.
I do too. I mean, I still think there's always that part of you that carries that along with you. It's kind of like being in recovery from alcoholism or addiction, right,
That's
Andrew?
what I mentioned.
That's
it.
not
Yeah.
something that you can just. It's always in your subconscious somewhere. It's
It's in my
something you carry.
DNA.
Yeah, you carry
yeah,
it with you, right?
I may not want to drink today. I may have a bad day, and when bad days, but I know I'm not going to reach for a drink because I can't. So,
Right.
yeah, it's not something that I don't not think about. There are days that I say, oh, I would, like a hot day. I will say, hey, a real cold beer would be nice right now, but I
Right.
can't.
Right.
As simple as that. So.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
we want to thank also him for rearranging, because we had him
Yes.
booked and then unbooked and then rescheduled, and he's in Hawaii, and
Yes.
and only because I think I was on vacation this week, we were able to squeeze him in and get it done, because it was a 6-hour time difference. And so thank you very much, Rob, for doing that.
Yes, we appreciate that. And we want to, as always, thank all of you for tuning into Cultimatum. We do appreciate your support in our mission to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
You can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, and Spotify for creators for more content and updates.
Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Cultimatum Podcast, where we dive deeper into these important topics.
And if you are a cult survivor looking for additional support, we recommend joining the Cult Escape and Recovery group on Facebook.
If you're interested in more of my work, check out my other podcast, Digital Dating, where I unpack the complexities of relationships in today's world, or The Weekend Rant, where I tackle life's frustrations with no filter. Or you can just head over to the anonymousandrewpodcast.com website, where all 3 podcasts are listed, and blogs, and it's being rebuilt and redone. So just check back often and you'll see new things.
Yes. And I have not said this on our podcast before, but I will say that my husband and I listen to The Weekend Rant, and we find it very entertaining. So go check it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you'd like to share, please feel free to email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
If you'd like to support the show, you can help us by covering production costs by buying us a cup of coffee. And that simply means click on the link in the show notes that says buy us a cup of coffee. And that will take you to a little place where you can donate $5 or $10 to the show. Anything you can do helps. And I want to thank those who have donated so far.
And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.